시작하게 된 점 양해 부탁드리고요. 발명된 아시아 콜로키움 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 그러면 이 행사를 이제 체어를 맡으신 이태강 경희대 교수님 모시고 이 행사의 기본적인 취지나 방향 이야기 들으면서 오늘 행사 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 감사합니다.
반갑습니다. 앉아서 할까요? 서서 하죠. 소개받은 이태광이고요. 이 프로젝트에 함께 하기로 했던 분들이 지금 약간 토요일 감안하지 못해가지고 약간 교통 혼잡이 지금 걸려가지고 제대로 좀 도착 못하고 좀 보실 것 같고요. 일단 이 세션은 영어로 진행이 될 겁니다. 그래서 혹시 통역기를 가지지 않으신 분들은 또 뭐 영어에 조금 부유해지신 분들은 통역기를 이용하시면 될 것 같습니다. 일단 이 주제를 가지고 발표하실 분은 5분이 됩니다. 그리고 이 주제를 가지고서 하게 될 내용들은 발명된 아시아 주제고요. 발명된 아시아의 가장 중요한 핵심적인 생각들은 아시아라는 것이 사실은 이제 발명이 됐다는 거죠. 물론 이제 뭐 모든 것이 다 발명이 되기 때문에 특별히 아시아만 발명된 게 있는 아쉽겠지만 사실 아시아 같은 경우는 우리가 아주 손쉽게 또 쉽게 지금 이 아시아 자체를 정체성화해가지고 아시아라 부르고 있습니다. 아시아를 아시아라 부르고 있는데 이 아시아를 아시아로 부르게 된 것은 생각보다 그렇게 오래되지 않았어요. 그것이 이제 이 발명된 아시아라는 주제 세션이 가지고 있는 문제의식입니다. 이 아시아라는 것은 어떻게 보면 타자의 눈에 의해서 만들어진, 정확하게 말하면 다케우치 요시미라는 일본의 지식인이 있죠. 그 지식인이 아시아를 정의하면서 했던 유명한 말이 바로 유럽의 시각으로 재정립된 것이 아시아라고 해야겠죠. 유럽의 시각으로 아시아가 만들어졌다는 거예요. 아시아라는 의식 속에는 유럽의 의식이 있다는 거예요. 유럽 사람의 관점으로서 본 것이 바로 아시아라는 것이고요. 그럼 아시아 이전에 뭐가 있었냐 우리에게 그런 질문을 이제 우리가 한번 던져봐야 되는 거죠. 다시 말하면 아시아라는 것을 의심했을 때는 아시아라는 것이 발명된 것이라고 했을 때는 그럼 아시아가 발명되기 이전에 무엇이 있었는가를 생각해 보면 아시아가 발명되었다는 사실을 명쾌하게 알 수 있을 것이라는 생각이 듭니다. 그런 어떤 주제의식들을 설명하기 위해서 그것을 논의하기 위해서 이 세션이 마련되었고요. 그래서 5분의 발표자들이 각자 다양한 어떤 관점으로 아시아에 대한 여러 가지 이야기를 좀 할 거라고 생각합니다. 그래서 가장 중요한 것은 기본적으로 아시아의 발명이라고 해가지고 아시아가 실체가 없는 것인가 보통 일반적으로 그렇게 생각하실 수 있어요. 아시아라는 것이 발명이 됐기 때문에 사실은 아시아라는 것이 실체가 없는 것이 아니냐, 허상이지 않느냐 이런 이야기를 하려고 하는 것이 아닙니다. 아시아가 발명이 되었기 때문에 또는 아시아가 발명되는 그 과정 속에 있는 그런 일반적인 허상 또는 인공성 자체가 아시아라는 거죠. 그게 이제 기본적인 생각이고요. 그래서 아시아를 부정하는 것이 아니라 아시아를 다시 한번 생각해 볼 수 있는 그런 방식이라고 합니다. 그래서 다케우치 요시미가 말했던 가장 중요한 명제가 바로 아시아는 방법이라는 거죠. 아시아를 사유함으로써 아시아적이지 않은 것과 아시아적인 것을 구분할 수 있고 그 아시아적이지 않은 것을 생각하는 방법으로서 아시아가 구분되는 거예요. 약간 좀 어려울 수가 있지만 사실은 아시아는 어떤 하나 영토적인 실체로서 존재한다기보다는 그런 방법으로서 존재하게 된다는 거예요. 아시아를 논의하는 순간 우리는 그 아시아를 만들어내었던 그 의식, 유럽의 의식이죠. 유럽의 의식들을 몰아볼 수 있다는 것입니다. 최근에 와서 이제 이러한 그 생각들을 발전시키고 있는 지식인이 중국에 있는 왕쿠이입니다. 왕쿠이라는 지식이 한국에도 자주 왔었고 일본의 책들도 지금 한국에 많이 번역되어 있습니다. 이 왕쿠이가 이런 다케우치 요시미의 생각들을 발전시켜서 아시아가 가지고 있는 좀 다른 의미들을 또 하고 들어가고 있죠. 기본적으로 이 아시아에 대해서 생각하는 거, 그러니까 아시아 이전에 뭐가 있었나 싶으면 아시아라는 것이 만들어지기 이전에 뭐가 있었느냐고 생각해 보려면 제가 볼 때는 중국이라는 제국이 있었거든요. 그 중국이라는 제국의 중심으로 한 어떤 여러 어떤 중국을 중심으로 한 여러 나라들의 연합체가 저는 있었다고 생각합니다. 최근에 이안 모리슨 같은 사람이 미국의 역사학자인데 썼던 왜 서양이 지배하는가 이런 역사책들을 보면 기본적으로 이제 많은 사람들이 생각할 때 아시아가 서양보다 힘이 약해서 서양에게 제국주의 침략을 당해서 식민지화 되었다 이렇게 생각을 많이 하시거든요. 근데 이안 모리슨 같은 이런 역사학자들은 이런 당연한 상식적 문제에 대해서 문제를 이제 제기하고 있죠. 그러니까 19세기 중반까지만 하고 전 세계에서 가장 부자였던 나라는 사실 중국이었어요. 전 세계 부의 70%를 가지고 있던 나라가 중국이었는데 왜 이렇게 부자 나라가 쉽게 말하면 가난한 유럽에게 전쟁을 당할 수밖에 없었는가? 왜 유럽에게 칠 수밖에 없었는가? 이게 사실 큰 문제였죠. 사실 우리도 마찬가지였다고 생각합니다. 구한말에 많은 지식인들이 중국 중심의 세력을 가지고 있다가 중국이 망할 거라고 아무 생각을 못했는데 근데 중국이 망해버린 거예요. 거기서 오는 충격이라는 것은 정말 이제 세계가 무너지는 느낌이 있을 것 같습니다. 그런 경험들을 하게 되고 그것이 바로 청일전쟁이었고 그 다음에 러일전쟁이었고 이런 걸 거치면서 많은 사람들이 일본이라는 나라가 사실 아시아였지만 서양의 것을 빨리 배워가지고 청나라로 사실 중국을 건드리고 러시아 혁퇴시키는 그런 느낌을 했습니다. 그래서 우리가 빨리 서양 것을 배워야 된다 이렇게 이제 나왔던 일본의 사람들이 있어요. 그 사람들은 그냥 개화파는 보고 의식 지식 우리나라 같은 경우 친일파라고 이런 사람들이 다 뭐냐면 과거에 어떤 그런 아시아라는 세계관이 무너지면서 아시아가 발명되기 이전에 동구원에 대한 반발 작용을 나타내게 됩니다. 그래서 정확하게 말하면 아시아를 만들어낸 것이 서양이라 하더라도 그 아시아를 만들어냈던 그 서양의 것을 배워서 서양과 같은 나라가 되었다고 생각하게 되는 건 사실은 이들이었어요. 이 과정들이 역사적 과정이었다고 한다면 그런 의문들 속에서 특히 아시아가 발명되기 전에 아시아는 무엇이었던가 이런 질문들이 굉장히 유효하다고 하는 역사를 다시 관찰하게 됩니다. 그러니까 뭐 아시아가 더 위대했어, 서양보다 더 위대했어, 아시아가 서양보다 더 잘났어야 되냐는 게 아니라 아시아가 만들어지는 과정과 서양이 지금 같은 서양이 되는 과정들은 사실은 굉장히 변전통적으로 결합이 된다. 이걸 두 개를 분리시킬 수 있는 이런 생각들이 기본이 있고 그것이 바로 아시아의 방법이다라는 생각을 가지고 있는 핵심적인 결합입니다. 그래서 당시 관원이 말하는 것처럼 기본적으로 아시아가 만들어지기 위해서 필요한 여러 가지 요소를 바로 그것은 바로 서양적인 것입니다. 이 서양적인 것이 들어오기 전에 아시아는 사실 단일한 체제가 아니었어요. 서양이라는 집단이 그걸 집단을 볼 수 있다면 일반적인 서양의 집단들이 주로 지정학적인 관계, 그러니까 각 어떤 왕국들 간의 정치적인 이해관계 때문에 이해관계로 연계해졌다면 이른바 이제 동양은 아시아가 되기 전에 동양이라는 것은 사실은 무역을 중심으로 해서 만들어져 있는 경제 공동체가 되었죠. 그러니까 유럽이 정치 공동체였다면 아시아는 경제 공동체였는데요. 그래서 이제 상당히 다른 패러다임이었고 여기서 이제 정치 공동체를 지향했던 유럽이 사실은 이제 아시아의 역사적으로 어떻게 보면 전면에 식민지를 만들고 이랬던 과정이었다고 생각합니다. 그래서 그런 어떤 전 세계사적인 어떤 그런 측면에서 아시아를 바라볼 수도 있지만 그런 세계사적인 측면에서의 아시아의 발명이라는 굉장히 중요한 주제들을 진작에 논의를 한다면 지금 현재 우리가 처해 있는 여러 가지 문제들을 다시 볼 수 있고 또 아시아로 지금 묶여져 있는 어떻게 보면 아시아로 불리고 있죠. 하지만 이 아시아라는 것은 사실 하나로 도달될 수가 없다. 그러니까 여기에 지금 우리들이 이렇게 초청한 이 연사분들을 보면 굉장히 국적이 다양합니다. 싱가포르부터 타이완까지 그리고 저기 국경까지 이렇게 다 연결이 돼 있어요. 국경에서도 물론 중국 학자를 초청한 게 아니라 국경에 머물고 있는 외국인 학자를 초청해가지고 이렇게 거기에 관한 이야기들을 들어보는 그런 시간을 가지고 있습니다. 그래서 이런 그 연사들의 구성만을 보더라도 사실은 아시아는 하나로 잘 통일이 안 되죠. 홍콩이라든가 싱가포르라든가 동남아시아와 중국과 우리나라와 일본은 사실 아시아라고 불리고는 있지만 사실은 전혀 이렇게 하고 들어가 보면 지금 오히려 이제 자본주의가 들어오고 전 지구화가 이루어지면서 금융 자본주의가 이루어지면서 더 한이랑 아시아가 통합되어 왔지 그 이전에 어떤 아시아들은 사실은 하나도 통합되지 않는 그런 모습들을 보여준다는 생각이 들어요. 거기에 대한 이야기들을 이번 주제 세션에서 할 것 같습니다. 하게 될 것 같습니다. 그리고 오늘은 각 그 세 분의 발표가 있고요. 내일은 이제 라운드 테이블이라고 그래 오늘 이야기했던 내용들을 토대로 해가지고 정리하는 그러한 그 전체 종합 토론 시간을 가집니다. 물론 내일도 두 개의 이야기들이 주제 이야기들이 이루어질 거죠. 오늘은 세 개의 주제 이야기들이 이루어질 겁니다. 그래서 오늘 참석하셔가지고 이걸 들어보시고요. 거기에 무심탄회하게 질의와 토론을 해보는 그런 시간을 가졌으면 좋겠습니다. 감사합니다. 자, 일단 일단 첫 번째 발표자 발표를 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 리처드 네, 첫 번째 발표자는 리처드 시아오라는 분이고요. 지금 타이완 내셔널 유니버시티에서 기교문학을 가지고 물론 이제 평의로 주된 분야입니다. 그래서 한국과 되게 유사하게 아시아에서 나서 미국에 가서 공부를 하고 돌아와서 대학에 있는 그런 전형적인 어떤 지식인의 삶을 살았죠. 그래서 아마 우리와 이제 공유하시지 말고 사실 타이완만 하더라도 가보시면 굉장히 한국과 유사합니다. 왜냐하면 일본에 의해서 근대화되기 때문에 그 축구리라든가 생활 방식이라든가 그런 관련된 여러 가지 문화들이 굉장히 유사합니다. 특히 이제 그 전통적인 것을 재창조하든지 또 그 전통적인 것을 재창조해가지고 어떻게 관광 상품을 만들어서 이렇게 구성을 하는 이런 것들도 상당히 유사해요. 아마 지금 PPT가 있어가지고 설치하고 발표하고 싶을 것 같습니다. 박수로 좀 맞아주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers, especially Alex Taekwondo for inviting me to this event. This is a wonderful venue. I've never seen an art center so big that it can get lost here easily. And thanks for all the Korean hospitality. This is my first time in Korea, so I'm quite impressed by a lot of different things. And also the location of this event, Gwangju, I think that that has some kind of special connection for me, not just for me personally, but for a lot of Taiwanese also. That the Gwangju. The Gwangju incident, or Gwangju uprising in 1980. Just around that time, there was a similar event in Taiwan that took place in 1979, the Formosa incident, or Kaohsiung incident, which was also a kind of symptom of that kind of dictatorship in the Cold War era. It's very ironic that in the so-called free world, the free world as the United States defines it, you can have dictatorship. So the kind of this is a kind of mirroring between these two countries. So we have a lot of similar experiences. In the past few days, I see something quite exciting and a little bit exotic too. But at the same time, they are also very familiar, and a lot of familiarity that I have also noticed. All right. So, so thanks again, and also thanks for your patience that we had this delay that was quite unexpected. But hopefully it's just a pleasure deferred. All right. Okay. So my talk today is titled "The World Has Never Been Closer: Plasticity, Worldliness, Strategy of Self-Emptying in Taiwanese Folk Art." This is a kind of overview of my talk. I'll go over the first two parts very quickly to give you some context about my talk, my topic. I know this is this kind of time limit, so I'll try my best to make it understandable to you. Okay, so now I'll start with a kind of preamble to touch on the scene of Asia. But my talk will be less about Asia itself, but more about a world that has always started without us. Right? And then I'll give you some context about colonialism in past and present in Taiwan. And of course, I want to focus on the folk art in Taiwan and some reflections that I can offer about local experiences in Taiwan. Okay, and maybe the last part I won't have too much time to elaborate on it, but I hope that maybe discussion I will have time to revisit this thing about plasticity. Oh. Okay, I just want to say very quickly that I was envisioning some kind of Asia with definitive qualities, but I think to be able to touch on that, I want to start with some kind of worldview that concerns not only Taiwan but a lot of the marginalized countries and regions in the world. I think that because of a world that has always started without us, there's Asia. So Asia as an idea, as a designation, has never been native or endemic to any Asian tradition. It has to be rediscovered after the onset of modernity. So for me to approximate Asia, I have to start from Taiwan's position of itself vis-a-vis the world. And it is only after I dwell on the self-emptying move characterizing Taiwanese culture can I return to the idea of Asia and more clearly delineate limit the conception of Asia without qualities, without predilections. So this is a kind of contextualization of the historical situation, historical and present situations in Taiwan. So I'll give you some context about serial colonialism in Taiwan. A lot of scholars have mentioned about this, most notably by Xu Meishi, a scholar on Asia and also on diasporic studies and Sinophone studies. So there's this unique situation of serial colonialism in Taiwan. First, Taiwan has been some kind of and have been going through different types and different degrees of colonization by various Western powers and of course the Japanese as well. First the Dutch, then the Spanish, the Qing dynasty, and then the Japanese, and finally the nationalist government from China, the KMT. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kuomintang, KMT, the name of the Nationalist Party. Due to this serial colonization, we have also experienced clashes and intersections of different worlds in Taiwan. Taiwan has actually been at the colliding courses of those foreign powers, and so to me that also resulted in some kind of colliding worldviews as well. So I'll skip this example about the greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. I'm sure the audience here should be also very familiar with this example. Just very quickly, it's perhaps the first time that the Taiwanese have this kind of keen awareness of being part of Asia as part of the world for the first time. So due to this kind of historical experiences and this current situation, there's this presumption about ourselves, which would be a kind of point of departure for my arguments or discussions from here out. So there's this presumption that we as Taiwanese have nothing. I think this kind of mentality or presumption is also shared by a lot of colonized peoples and countries around the world, especially in the third world, that we have nothing, that we are left behind on the invisible margins of the world at large. Even though in the case of Taiwan, we have been at the center of power clashes from without, geopolitically speaking, even until today. Of course, Taiwan is strategically very important for the United States, just like South Korea, right? Because of this experience and this kind of presumption, there's this constant dream of seeing this connection to the world outside. In Chinese, we say 无缝接轨. So this is something that is quite important to the kind of examples and the kind of arguments that I'm going to elaborate on later. Just a little bit more specific about the context of serial colonialism. It's not just serial, but it's also multi-layered. Just think of the kind of relationship between the Han, ethnic Han people in Taiwan vis-a-vis the indigenous people, the regional tribes in Taiwan. So the historical and current situations, we have this tendency to willfully or unwittingly leave behind traces from the past. Either willfully leave behind or unwittingly forgotten. So this a lot of cultural movements or a lot of experiences, a lot of historical experiences seem to want to wipe the slate clean to begin anew because of this waves of colonization that in a fairly short period of time we experience different powers, different types of colonization. So this is actually at the heart of my argument about self-emptying as the default mode of Taiwan culture. And I will definitely elaborate more on this through my examples. So this, we also have this tendency, this mentality about the enthusiastic embracement of the world by leaving behind tradition. And then because Taiwan is also actually a secular economy, although this identity hasn't been fully understood or hasn't been well accepted until very recently. Taiwan is a secular economy. Just like other secular economies in other parts of the world, we can hardly claim a tradition before coming to this new place, before our ancestors came to this new place. So at this present site of this location, that tradition has to be reevaluated and reconsidered. And if you think of the Cold War era, when Taiwan used to be a legitimate inheritor of the so-called Chinese tradition, right? That, for example, we use traditional Chinese writing instead of simplified Chinese, right? So it used to be the case that Taiwan can claim that tradition, right? But now, of course, there's no way to compete with China for that claim. So that also has something to do with the more recent change of attitude and mentality in Taiwan culture. Okay, so I'd like to elaborate on some of the points that I mentioned earlier through some local examples. These examples are mainly about culture, production, reproduction, that are inextricably tied to that kind of enthusiastic embracing of foreign cultures in a self-emptying move that re-territorializes on the default. That is, they revert back to nuanced equilibriums of altered and reinforced modes of existence. This is some kind of heavy writing here. I'll explain that later. But through my examples, hopefully, I want to show that there's this kind of nuance between the altered and reinforced modes of existence. Okay, this is a little bit embarrassing. This is my first example, Exhibit 1. This is a picture of a new, very recently funded museum in Tainan, southern city in Taiwan. There's this Qimei Museum. You can look at the picture here. I wonder, maybe some of you, maybe this picture will remind some of you of some of the images that looks quite familiar, maybe somewhere in Europe. This is the facade of the Chimay Museum. And the fountain, the sculpture of the fountain here actually is a kind of replica, very detailed and very kind of perfect replica of the statue just beside the Versailles Palace. So this is kind of very detailed reproduction of that part of the same. But I want to say a few more things about the example of Chimay Museum. Although it looks like a counterfeit, but it's not your usual suspect of counterfeit artwork or product that is meant to dupe or reap profits. It is a reproduction of 18th century European sensitivity in Taiwan, especially in Tainan. It was built and funded by an entrepreneur and designed to educate, impress, and reform Taiwanese subjectivity. It is, they didn't do that for profits. For a lot of visitors, especially students, disabled people, young underprivileged people, can go there and visit for free. But it also has become a landmark in China and has seen endless flows of visitors. It's very hard to book a reservation, and you got to reserve online first before you can wait for your turn to visit the museum. I would say most of the visitors are local people, and I wouldn't recommend you to visit there if you happen to visit Taiwan. Just save up for your trip to Europe. But this is a very interesting example. Hopefully, you can see that kind of contrast between this example and the following example I'm going to show you. Okay, exhibit number 2. I'm sorry I won't be able to show you the images of this example because it's in a DVD and there's no time for me to play that or any parts of that here. But this is about some grammars in a remote mining village in northern Taiwan where those grammars and also some grandpas took up Senba dance as a way of revitalizing their dying community. And that community basically consisted of mostly the remaining older people. So why Senba dance? That's a very intriguing case in that sense. Without many other details, I would like to draw from this example or draw your attention to this kind of seemingly unthinkable cross-cultural encounter. It's one of the more remote areas in Taiwan, and you can easily see that kind of incompatibility between that kind of place, those types of people, and this kind of imported foreign influences. I will argue that the simply unthinkable cross-cultural encounters wouldn't have been possible if the community hasn't been forced to empty itself of what it had, though they only had their little, right? And considering the circumstances of the demise of the mining industry and the ensuing uprooted population, right? So they had nothing, and so they tried very desperately to have something, and it ended up to be something very radical that actually took place there and changed the whole community at a collective level. Let's just very quickly say something about the contrast between the examples so far. I have another example that we'll bring up later. Okay. the first example, the Qimei example, actually you can easily imagine that is a more negative example. Although I'm sorry for this kind of simplification, but of course it's more negative example. I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of that example at all. But that's what happened in Taiwan. So that the Qimei example exemplifies kind of reinforced mode of existence. Although it seems to be going out of its way to look for something very different from what we have in Taiwan. And also the case in that remote village where they took up Senpa dance actually represents some kind of alternate mode of existence. And I like to, through this example, I like to bring up this kind of nuance between elasticity and plasticity. And then definitely I will talk more about that through my next example. Elasticity is a way of immersing itself into the world, and plasticity is another way of immersing itself into the world. But there's definitely not always a very clear-cut distinction between the two. Hopefully I will have time to get back to this later. Okay, this is the third example, the stage. This is about the normal stages of traveling vaudeville shows in Taiwan. Okay, you'll see that in the images shortly. It's a very showy display of images on the stage, and that kind of occasions for overflowing or rolliness with flashy sights and sound. And through the photos I'm going to show you, I like to think along with you how those photos capture the stage, or how those images are captured through the stage by being emptied of its contents. So this is the first picture of the stage. I think Alex might have seen this in Taiwan, right? Okay, he's busy. Okay, anyway, this is the series of photos I'm going to show you is done by this artist, Shen Zhao. You see his name there. He's a journalist turned photographer, but there's something very interesting about the photos of these stages here. I will show you first the photos without much explanation, but later on, the clips of the documentary I'm going to show you will explain more, and I'll add my own explanation. So let's just enjoy the photos a little bit here, without my intervention. This is the first photo. I wonder what you think about the images on the stage. Okay, let's see. This is the same image, the same stage, on a different site. This is a different stage, a different site. The occasion is an outdoor wedding banquet. I hope you will be able to see and pay attention to the images on the stage. See the kind of tops of castles. Definitely won't see that in Taiwan. I mean the castles. Okay, this is also a different stage and a different site. You can see that it's most likely in the countryside. the setting. The imagery here seems to be more abstract than the previous two. This is another stage, again in the countryside, where you can see the temples opposite of the stage. Another stage with that kind of museum park theme hanging on the stage. Again, this is beside another temple. Yeah, the temples are one of those typical settings where they set up a stage. Okay, this is another wedding banquet, but indoor. It's kind of some kind of auditorium. See the pictures here, the images painted on the stage definitely are not images related to Taiwan, not endemic to Taiwan. The world imagined on the stage. This is one of my favorite photos about the stage. Not forever, I don't know what that means. But its setting is very interesting. It's just like one of those alleys very common in Taiwan, little streets and alleys, streets or alleys. And there's this kind of bubble tea stand just next to the stage. That's very common sight in Taiwan, kind of bubble tea stand. Again, the images has very little to do with Taiwan. And this is actually my favorite photo, my favorite stage in this series. Look at the painting on the stage. This is the only one where you can see just a little bit resemblance between the painted stage and the stage on the other side, which is a stage for the traditional glove puppetry, glove puppetry, 布袋戏. So the pattern and the colors do resemble each other a little bit, right? But that's the only resemblance to some kind of cultural elements in Taiwan that we can see from those examples and those stages. Again, this is beside another temple. Okay. All right. So I'd like to show you some clips from the documentary. And I have to. Can someone help me play the documentary there? You can see if you go back there, let's see that video file, yes, and just, go to, 040, so that we can save some time. If you want, I can play the whole clip to you, but I think we don't have that much time. Huh? I go to that part? How about this? Let's just play the whole documentary. It's about just 5 minutes, 6 minutes. That'd be good? And how about we just play the whole video? It's about 6 minutes. That'd be good? Huh? Now it's the end. Oh, I'm not sure. Let's see. 040. I think this is the. That's toward the end. If you don't mind, you can just play the whole clip so that you can make it easier for you to operate. Oh, no sound. Okay, they can just the silent movie and do no time. There will be English subtitles. Okay, all right. Let's just watch this documentary silently. Maybe I'll explain a little bit of the way. This is the artist looking for the automobile traveling shows in the countryside. Okay, he's asking them where will the show be. Okay, this is the man who is setting up the stage. He's setting up the stage. Yeah, Americanized. Okay, he's talking to the interviewer. His focus is on the common people, experience of the common people in Plebeian society in Taiwan. You'll be wondering what will be on the stage when the show begins. I hope you won't be in shock when you see it. The nine counts, the show is about to begin. You see, this is another banquet. Okay, he's explaining the origin of this kind of stage truck. Okay, all right, the dancing girls are out. There will be, in some cases, there will be a very erotic pole dancing as well. That's the way to pay tribute to the gods or the deities. I think that they like it. Yeah, those performers should have PhDs. Yeah, that's what he's saying. Another stage, you can see that, with different types of meet you. Karaoke. It's part of ordinary lives of the common people. So it's, yeah, they're all dancing, they can also do karaoke, socializing in that kind of event, in that kind of occasion. Speaking about his relationship to the object of his photography, this is the stage I mentioned earlier, Forever. He's preparing for the exhibition of his photos. We can skip this part of this. It's not possible, so just bear with me a little bit. Yes? Okay, maybe we can just stop it here. I think that's enough for my explanation. We can stop the video right now. That's fine. That's fine. But, okay, that's fine. I think we have. I have already shown you the parts that I might mention later. Okay, thanks. Okay, so it's a different slide. No. Conferences, Korea Forum. Okay, the world has never been yeah, no one meeting. Yeah, the world has never been closer. Yeah. Okay, can we go to slide number 23? Okay, 23. Okay, good, thanks. Okay, we can see from those clips that for the artist to capture the image of the common people, especially the Plebeian society in Taiwan, he focuses on the stage that features little to none of the cultural characteristics or elements of Taiwan known to either the locals or the outsiders. Yet there is no denying that the stage has played an important part in the lives of the common people, or they have played their integral parts on it. And there's this kind of distance and emptiness featured prominently in those photos as well. So if I have time, I'd like to dwell on the role of the photographer as a vanishing mediator, but I'll just leave it like that for now. I want to, I'd like to draw your attention to this kind of immersion into the world at large, and what you can extrapolate from the photos and also the clips, that kind of immersion of art into life and vice versa. The stage features the world outside instead of Taiwan. Taiwan is always looking for and yearning for the join with the outside world. Okay, finally I can touch on a little bit on the subject of plasticity. I'm sorry that probably I don't have time to elaborate more clearly about the connection between the argument here and the third example. But I'd like to first of all mention this kind of argument made by Catherine Manabu, that the subject is plastic. The subject is plastic because it's able to transform itself to transsubjectization. But it is plastic also means that once formed, it cannot spring back to its previous state. That kind of springing back to its original state will have more to do with elasticity instead of plasticity. So plasticity, according to Catherine Manabu, which is a kind of her reading of Hegel, means that one's openness to all kinds of influences and resistance. So the kind of more negative examples that can be categorized as elasticity is more about calculated maneuvers to adapt to the situation, to appeal to flexibility, and also it gives us that kind of vision or that kind of illusion about how the subject can be anything or become anything that he likes to be. But that's not the kind of argument or that kind of vision that I have or that the Chinese example can exemplify. Rather, I'd like to emphasize plasticity as opposed to elasticity. And in some circumstances, the subject can explode and transformed into something unexpected. That kind of unexpected reinvention of the subject has less to do with flexibility or elasticity, but then had more to do with plasticity. So the subject is plastic in the sense that it is able to receive form and to give form. We can see from the photos of the stage infer from the photo of the stage that the stage, I will argue, is formed par excellence in Taiwanese folk art, because the stage is a projection of our desires about the world, in terms of the fantasy world of our world. The stage is the world, and the world the stage, on which one must enter oneself in order to enact oneself, to immerse oneself into a world. That's the last example. So, I would like to argue that self-containedness can be considered a fertile ground for such a formalist approach, what seems to be a formalist approach, because that can lead to the moment of no comparison, which is rare instances where one can open up an unforeseen empty space within oneself that can trigger a formation of the subject. So plasticity involves a certain resistance that appears to be passive. I probably don't have time to elaborate more on this. Passive, inert, that appears to be passive, inert, that takes place by default. And if I have time to talk more about Digital Asia, I think that's kind of those kind of tentative thinking on my part. But I think when we conceive of Asia, it might be possible to envision Asia as this kind of self-emptying concept of destination. And I to sorry for waiting so long. I'd like to end my talk on that note and leave the stage now. Thanks for your patience. DVDs for another example. I have a DVD for the example number 2. Yeah.
Okay, so after the interesting talk, there is some question time. Okay, so now that we have time, just I think we can 2 or 3 questions about what's comments.
So I thought I could leave the stage at the end of my talk. Okay. So welcome your questions and comments. Develop farmer into what?
I don't know. What is self-empty? It means a kind of ambiguous term.
Empty oneself. In the case of Thomas Volkart, empty oneself in order to immerse oneself into the world. But of course, this is an illusion. That kind of immersion is a suture, but there will be a lot of traces that one cannot really leave behind. But what I'm trying to say is that this is a gesture on the part of Taiwanese that because we have nothing, right? This presumption that we have nothing is already a self-empty gesture, and in order we presume that in order to immerse ourselves into the world, we have to kind of empty ourselves.
Are we talking about some kind of self-negation here?
Yes, to some degree self-negation, right? But like I said, there will come a moment when we realize that there's no way that we can just say, okay, we really have nothing, because those something that we thought we had left behind will come back and has some effect on our current, not only our current situation, but what we saw is kind of transforming moment for our subjectivity.
Okay, background why I'll ask the question is that while understood it midway lecture that it was the self-negation thing and come back. But at the end, somehow, perhaps I misunderstood, but my impression was that at the end you have a slightly different approach to the same concept. You can bring talk that there's
Okay, the last slide, or maybe the last couple of slides. Oh, okay. slides number 27 and 28, maybe.
Sorry. Self-emptying as a fertile ground for such a holistic approach.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack here. I know that. Okay, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, what I didn't have time to elaborate is that I think a more desirable example of cross-cultural encounter should undergo that moment of no comparison. That there's, I mean, that there's this kind of a foreign culture has no. It's hard for us to establish a relation to it other than emptying ourselves, right? And because in the case, in the more negative examples that I mentioned, it's more like, okay, we have this exotic thing, okay, we put it here in Taiwan, it's within reach, okay, we don't have to go to Europe to see the same, you can see that in Taiwan. And it's not really, it's like a sightseeing, or sightseeing, like, it's not like trying to know New York in depth on the top of the sightseeing bus. Okay, there's no, you might be able to establish some kind of comparison, okay, but if you don't go through that moment of no comparison, there wouldn't be the kind of cross-cultural encounter that I envision. That has to take place at a deeper level. In that case, we discover some kind of unforeseen empty space within ourselves, right? It's not just that thing cannot just readily again within reach, but eventually you will come back to earth. Of course, there's no way that it can pretend to be a sandlot dancer. Okay, so that's why in my other project I work on this notion of default, and that's kind of that kind of coming back, and then you realize that there has to be some kind of dialectic, what Malabou would say, a kind of embedded dialectic at its origination. So that's a lot of different, a lot of conversation I know I still have to work on.
Okay. Just may I ask something in connection to that? It's just an association of what you said. I've seen similar places in China, like the first Ximei, etc. It shows, the interesting detail is not this replica itself, but for me at least, the interesting detail is that that replica creates or structures of a kind of behavior. And this behavior, what I mean with kind of behavior, is that the same persons, when they go to it, they do exactly the same thing. They do the same thing that they were doing at that replica in China, which means they take X place snapshot back home. They could do the same thing that they do at home. So what is going on, I think, at the deeper level is the redefinition of experiencing territorial differences. It's a re-territorialization of human experience. It's a kind of, it's a societal spectacle multiplied by two. It's just, another treatment. And it's quite amazing because, I meet people and I'll say, yeah, I've been to Europe. You've been to Europe. You've been, yes, 1 week, 10 cities. How is it possible? What is that kind of experience we have? It's the same thing as a theme park. The way you move in that space is the same in the theme park space. That's just a fact. I don't know what you
Like I mentioned in that slide, it's designed to educate, to impress, to reform Taiwanese subjectivity. That's the stated purpose of that museum. So it's already aimed for some kind of meaningful cross-cultural encounter. Its very existence just causes that encounter. Of course, you go sightseeing, you get a sense, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't. Maybe it doesn't matter where you are, right? But the thing is that they try to territorialize it in Taiwan, right?
I'm just agreeing with that. I mean, that was just my question. Maybe I'll mention this at the end when we're doing our discussion. But the same. I don't need to repeat it. I will repeat. Darius has just said in my own way. How is the experience different? You know, that was just my. How is the experience different at Tainan than it would be at Versailles? I think this is the problem when you're using words like tradition today in art. Tradition, this tradition or that tradition, because it's obviously always implying a kind of, something like modernity or something which is progressive, novel, emptying out of subjectivity implies a certain tradition, a certain kind of heritage, cultural heritage, and that kind of the whole Disneyland thing is already going on in Versailles. If you go to Versailles today, it's for a lot of those people, the experience that they would have there would be no different to the experience they would have at Disneyland, Paris. It would be the same experience, and the photographs they would take at Versailles would be part of their whole experience of that particular day. So yeah, I don't need to repeat it. I think that is something that I would want to explore further. The use of the word tradition implies authenticity, implies so many things that today I think are problematic in a kind of epistemological sense, in the sense of our knowledge. I'm not denying the fact that there is some tradition, that some tradition is existing, but I'm saying in terms of how we think and talk about that. So maybe that was the point you were making. I think the example was very good. I perfectly agree with it. I think that's something I want to explore a bit further. Anyway, thank you for the presentation.
Do I have time to respond? Well, actually, exactly what I'm trying to point out to those examples. Those are Taiwanese. Yes, exactly. I think that's the Taiwanese way of questioning our so-called tradition, and also at the same time looking for maybe I don't want to use the word nativist, but a new tradition, a reinvented tradition, because there's this growing consciousness part of Taiwanese to kind of distance itself from the Chinese tradition, the Han Chinese tradition, especially now it's the indigenous people's tradition, cultures have already been part of the national narrative in Taiwan. So it's being reinvented, and the more conventional and the more conventional sense of traditional, what you might think of, you might think of Taiwanese as a part of the Chinese traditional part of Greater China. That has already been questioned for some years, and we're still looking for a new way to redefine ourselves so that there might be a break to the previous received tradition. That definitely there's always that questioning of our tradition.
Thank you to Paul. Actually, since we don't have enough time to continue on this question, so I also got this question Let's question at the end of the session. Alright, just as a moderator, I'm necessarily must to take this session. So next thing, we just welcome the next speaker. Alright, we can go to the teacher. Okay, next speaker is Tony C. He actually he's teaching in the National University of Singapore. It's not the University of Singapore, it's the National University of Singapore. And he's studied in Youth School. He did actually medical and philosophical subject. So that's actually let's speak about mental Asia.
Hello. Hi, thanks, Alex. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and it's a privilege to be invited here, and I want to express my thanks to Alex Dewanli and curator Ms. Yang Jiong for inviting us here. Okay. So I'm from Singapore. So today my topic is Becoming Asia, a critique of Asia as a method. Okay, so I won't have any visuals here, so it will be mainly a reading of my text. Okay. So, does Asia exist? This paper argues that Asia does not exist, although much ink has been spilled on the question of what makes Asia. Relatively little has been focused on the positive aspects. Most of the scholarship on the area either proceeds with the assumption that the question of Asia is not problematic, that it is a given, or that Asia is a construct, something in the order of imagined communities as spoken of by Benedict Anderson. While these works are valuable in that it makes us reflect on what makes us Asia and how we are different from Europe, the question of post-colonialism is haunting. Most of these works remain in the order of transcendence, that is, they either long for a European order or now a neoliberal imaginary which is no longer in existence, or they imagine a romantic and pristine Asia which has been lost. The issue with this is that it situates us in a position of subordination in relation to what Deleuze would call a transcendent. What we would like to argue is that the fact that there is no Asia is not something to lament about, but something positive in the order of inventions. To begin with, I need to talk about China and its engagement with modernity. The Chinese engagement with the modernity can be represented by the May 4th movement. Historically, the May 4th movement was not homogeneous, but composed of different theoretical positions ranging from liberalism to communism and anarchism that sought to explain China's so-called backwardness in relation to the West. It also represented an attempt to break from the Qing government, and so it had a nationalistic flavor as well. Philosophically, it also sought to break from the traditional Confucian way of thinking in order to arrive at a new China. The movement spanned decades and symbolized a stage in Chinese history in which thinkers opened up to internationalism and cosmopolitanism. The term was not invented by historians retrospectively, but to describe a stage in Chinese history but it was self-consciously created by the participants and the movement itself. The advocates regarded themselves as bringing science and technology and democracy to China. most important organization that emerged from the movement was the Chinese Communist Party. There is a diversity of interpretations regarding the May 4th movement. An early example is Zhou Zidong's May 4th movement, first published in 1960, which was before what we call Mao's movement. First published in the 1960s, it focused on the intellectual ferment in Beijing that led to the attack on tradition and the move towards Western civilization. Later studies moved away from Beijing, and one such example as Lin Yusheng's The Crisis of Chinese Consciousness, published in 1979, was more nuanced, arguing that the single-minded iconoclasm of most opponents of Confucianism was ironically shaped by Confucianism itself. Most recently, these studies were developed by works of Ye Wenxin's study of the rise of communism in Hangzhou and James Carter's consideration of its effects on higher rate. More recent works in the area included Jonathan Spencer's The Chinese and Their Revolution. Although there is no doubt a lot of intellectual ferment during this period of time, one undeniable fact is that it seems to be grappling with Confucianism. The May 4th thinkers of the 1960s, of the 1920s for example, seems bent on opposing the old traditions. Intellectuals, poets, and writers such as Zhou Baofeng, Chen Duxiu, Ding Ling, and Lu Xun, as well as thinkers included Su Shaopan, Chen Zhiming, and Li Zhehou, had various ideological perspectives and different methods, but they seem to be unified by various degrees of acceptance and opposition to the traditional Confucian order. Confucianism provided the background and the impetus for rethinking the meaning and the fate of China, and so it was a rich source of intellectual activity. However, it also prevented the Chinese intellectuals from developing, in my opinion, to develop a more universal vision of what Asia could mean. Here we are reminded of a more recent example in the works of Wang Hui. While his extensive grasp of historical facts and theoretical developments impressive, he eventually suggested the replacement of European sovereignty with a Chinese sovereignty based on Confucian principles. This suggests that we have yet to overcome the Confucian horizon. On the practical level, it is not possible to replace one theoretical framework, in my opinion, with another because although Confucianism is part of China, it's part of Asia, Asia is not part of Confucianism. The idea of reducing the differences in Asia under the image of Confucianism suggests of an attempt at intellectual colonization and will not be accepted by different nation-states and communities. On a theoretical level, the reduction of difference into an identity also seems to mean the theoretical violence that Chinese intellectuals are up against. Thus, a return to Confucianism as a means of dealing with present crisis would no doubt be a regress in Hegelian terms, as it only reintroduce an authoritarian identity in place of a European one. Wang Hui's works are ironic, in my opinion, because it presents us with a view that is diametrically opposite to that of the May 4th movement. What we learn from these Chinese intellectual activities is the perpetual oscillation between rejecting Confucius and reaffirming the importance of Confucius. Thus, there is a failure to think of the universal in Confucian thought. In Asia as a method towards de-imperialization, Chen argued that we must undertake the task of rethinking our usual understanding of politics, one in which the political space is divided into the spheres of the state and civil society. This distinction is overly simplistic because it overlooks the experience of East Asian modernity in which civil society has been subordinated to the state in order to keep them excluded from politics. Chen argues that an important task at hand is to develop an additional sphere called the Minjian, or the people's sphere, as a space of political society. The term being is developed in opposition to Quan, or official kingdom, or officialdom, to divide the space between the officialdom and the people, right? So Chen advocates the growth of a separate space. This is a space of subaltern struggles and is relatively autonomous from dominant institutions of state and even civil society. This is expressed in some East Asian countries, such as South Korea, where key reformers and social movements have emerged from popular people's movement or Minzhu movements that have directly helped to reconfigure the political field, precisely by grouping a variety of social struggles together into a radical oppositional bloc in opposition to the state. In South Korea, the usage of the term civil society, Sunmin Sang-ho, or citizen society, largely emerged from this bloc and is associated with comprehensive social transformation and people's struggle, rather than simply a normative or passive interest group. However, this method does not seem to be possible in other post-colonial states, where there is neither key reformers nor popular movements available, or when even oppositional blocs have been subordinated by the state or recuperated by the state. An important criticism of the idea of Mingjian as a political society is that although it is a good idea to achieve, it may sound overly simplistic and may not be applicable in different contextual, political, historical, and cultural programs. How can we create a comprehensive political force or space outside of established institutions and within Asian states? However, it could be argued that Chen seems to be advocating not merely for a community that exists within a nation state, but for a political community that corresponds to the struggles of other post-colonial states. Here we can see images of a reflection of what Michael Hart called the multitude of an empire. It can be said to be a community or a society that can find connections between different Asian states in the context of dominant neoliberal geohistorical power relations. The idea of a Mingjian sphere seems to be a proposal for a method instead of a normative sphere of influence. Guan Xingchen, or in China Chen Guanxing, believes that this is now an urgent political task. His basic idea is that although the intellectual work of decolonization began across East Asia after World War II, it was prevented from developing during the Cold War. Chen places special importance on the Cold War because it was the Cold War that invented Asia as a region as today, what we call like the whole plastic myth, right? So the idea of Asia as an invention, where did it come from? It came from the Cold War, right? So the Cold War imposes its imperial image, or what Hindus want to call dogmatic image, of differing layers of imperial and colonial history, and prevented the development of local identities and histories. This imagined and constructed Asia remains active in post-colonial states in various subterranean ways. This can be seen in the image of the internal enemy, which has been invoked by post-colonial states in Asia to repress internal social movements and intellectuals that are opposed to the state. Furthermore, this can also be seen in the development of the imaginary of terror and territory and in the geopolitical and economic alliances. All these events prevented post-colonial subjectivity from developing in the Asian region. Critical to the success of these movements is an intellectual deconstruction, according to Chen, of the traces of the Cold War, which must be carried out simultaneously with the processes of decolonization and de-imperialization. Chen acknowledges this, and he recognizes that this can be a painful process because it demands that Asian scholars engage in a process of self-critique that is even more radical than the European ones. Specifically, he states that this involves the practice of self-critique in page 3, the practice of self-critique, self-negation, and self-rediscovery. But the desire to form a less coerced and more reflexive and dignified subjectivity necessitates it. Chen's idea of Asia as method resonates with Takeuchi Yoshimi's idea of Asia. Takeuchi Yoshimi criticized the Japanese project of overcoming Europe during around World War II because he considered Japanese society to be equally oppressive. Thus, the project of overcoming Europe by the Japanese imperial forces only seems to replace European colonialist oppression with Japanese discriminatory social oppression, which is an equally oppressive, if not more oppressive, discriminatory social structures of the Japanese colonialist Thus, even if such a project were to be successful, as Takeuchi would argue, it will not necessarily lead to any improvement in the structure of aggression against the people. This is why Takeuchi Yoshimi does not accept Japanism as a solution to European colonialism. Instead, he associates Japanism with ultra-nationalism. Likewise, he is wary of the belief in Japanism and ultra-nationalism, which is linked to the Kyoto school, which is very radical, right-wing kind of assemblage that sort of was able to incorporate the Zen Buddhist monks, right? So, yeah, it was kind of effective in that regard. So, even if they banished Europe, Takeuchi would argue, they would not have banished the slave structure in Asia, or what, in our coming book, right, if it comes to be, it's about fascism, right? So, now modernism is fashionable, he argues, as a reaction against these European ideologies, but the structure that accommodates modernity is not problematized. In other words, Japanese intellectuals have failed, right, to really consider what can free Japan, and in other words, Asia, from the Europe, which they call the master. They have only envisioned the replacement of one master with another master. Okay. So what is to be done? Takeuchi suggests that in order for Japan to be independent, it must not seek to overcome Europe as much as it must seek to go beyond Europe in a way that even utilizes the resources of Europe itself. This can be seen in the strategy of reinterpreting the concept of Asia. Takeuchi Yoshimi does not interpret Asia as a geographical concept, but as a concept that is other to Europe. Asia is a non-European. In this sense, Asia is a nominal term, as what the medievals, dance scholars would want to call, in which there is nothing that corresponds, but which resonates with it. And Japan is non-Asian in this regard, and Japan can only become truly Asian when it leaves behind modernity, which is a European concept, a concept that is followed by ideas of discrimination and authoritarianism. Unlike other Japanese intellectuals, Takeuchi Yoshimi criticized other Japanese intellectuals who, because they regarded themselves as superior to other Asians. Takeuchi believes that Chinese modernity, in fact, for all its problems, surpassed Japanese modernity. This is because against the idea of overcoming modernity, Takeuchi argues that the idea of overcoming was itself a catchword for oppression, or perhaps it was one of the magic words for social control. Overcoming modernity in Japan therefore served as a symbol that was associated with the concept of greater East Asian war against the European. In sum, to overcome modernity or European modernity, the final attempt at falling thought, but an attempt that completely failed in Takeuchi Yoshimi's conception. Takeuchi referred to the ideals of Rabindranath Tagore and Rushin in addressing the issues of Asianness. He states, rather than overcoming the Orient must re-embrace the West. So, for Asia to be really free, it must not accept Europe unquestioningly. It must not reject Europe unquestioningly as well. Europe is not the enemy, right? It must re-embrace the West, but in a way which changes the West itself in order to realize the latter's outstanding cultural values on a greater scale. Okay? Such a rollback of cultural values would create a sort of a pan-European Asian, or if you like to call it a Eurasian universality. The Orient must change the West in order to further elevate these universal values that the West itself produced but have failed to develop to a higher stage. This is the main problem facing East Asian relations, East-West relations today, and it is at once a political and cultural issue if we can look at the events in the world today. In other words, we are faced with two failed attempts at confronting modernity, modernity which is broad but universal, and a universal model which is impossible and perhaps even colonizing and re-imperializing. So the essential question now is where is this subjectivity? But
이거 오디오 되는 거예요? 돼요.
I mean, I could probably mention this later, and I guess I will, but since I haven't been time, Asia is a European invention concept. But at the same time, Asia is changing.
And I do agree that with the rise of economic development in Asia, there's a tendency, and it might be a good idea to define Asia in economic sense. China, right? If you're a Chinese national, if you're a Chinese national, you're not a Taiwanese national, you'll be very happy with the rise of China. Economic powerhouse. But at the same time, what is the object of that rise is not based on traditional Asian, it's not based on Confucianism or Taoism or Asian ideas. It's based on Taoist concepts. It didn't say we're a nationalist people, right? Mao defeated the nationalists using Marxist studying Leninist concepts. And if you extend beyond Mao to talk about Deng Xiaoping and subsequent Chinese leaders, the way they achieved the rise, the consequence is that they were very strong Marxist thinking. Otherwise, they have the latest cutting edge idea. So Korea has strong roots, but in other areas outside Korea, most areas, there is Eurasia.
Đi xuống tầng dưới á, xuống 2 tầng như thế, đi ra tầng này nè.
Chú ơi, chú đi đâu? Đi toilet hả? Ra qua cái hình xanh kìa.
Đó, cửa ra.
Đó là hả?
Nè, cửa ra nè.
Forces are expanding around the world. What is object work? Work is something, an object. What is this object? I think basically that object is the object of science and technology. Everything around us is produced, is measured, is counted, is digitized. It's a piece of binary information, etc. Doesn't matter if you live in Sulawesi or London, you are confronting the same measurable, basically Cartesian world. Now, as I have to look into my next challenge, crucial formulation, I should scientificity goes very deep. But you know, Freud, he has this text quite early, the first decade of the last century, 3 essays on sexuality. He says that a child behaves like a scientist. He develops hypotheses, and then he tries to make observations. And we read it, we don't react. It's an utterly absurd idea. Qualify a child as a scientist. They are good scientists. You didn't do that in 120 years. Kids were not. What I'm trying to say is that how extensive this scientific technological work is, how it has been the most intimate corners of our existence. Now, first question. First step is to know from what this measurable world object is made. What is it made of? What is it made of? I agree with where the musician and artists agree on criticizing is that it is made of some kind of formless matter that we do not have access to. And science gives this object as being conceived, conceptualized, and understood by us, philosophy, scientific. But I think that there is a problem with this position, which is a kind of anti-position, basically, is that it creates this idea of something that can be reached to if we just succeed to transgress the limit between the deciphered world and that pure state of immediate materiality. That leads into another kind of killing. As an irony is, but this kind of attitude kills too. Normally it kills in the name of religion. It has been doing that for centuries. At least on the western part of this. Perhaps there is something in Asia, and then India, that could be an element of an answer to this question. Zero. Yeah, when we said that the word is silent, or everything's gone. The logic, the very first act was when we started counting zero. And Indian, because they didn't know about zero. Zero is an ancient number from India, which is a big revolution in the history of mathematics, right? Roman mathematicians, first Islamic mathematicians introduced this. What is zero? I heard that some people have read like you here, right? So zero is counting nothing. Alright. So I think this gives us the first point of departure. I would say contemporary art deciphers the role of scientifically counting and counting objects. It's a matter of decipher. This person is chemical. It's a brain. It needs to be developed right. But I can give you an example, even from something that seems to be accounting, which is It's pop art. And in pop art, you have Andy Warhol, right? That's things of this year. And Andy Warhol has a painting, or has an art. It's not technical. It's called Can of Coke. I don't know if you have seen it or not. Can of Coke by Warhol is a can of Coke that is squeezed and has been only consumed and thrown away. This picture, you see something that is a can of Coke, and at the same time it's not. It is there as an object, but at the same time it's a negation of the first quality of a can of Coke, which is identity to the next can of Coke. Right? It's a singularly reduced commodity. You're reduced to this squeezed, deformed, distorted shape. This is kind of this illustration of what I mean by cipher. So this shell, this empty can, or this can that trapped in the desert, it's not a cipher representation. It's not even a promise of an immediate access before this matter. That's something else. What is this something else? I would say that the something else is sensible, sensibilis, as it was called in Latin tradition. Sensible is the object presented as a discourse. The object is there, but paradoxically, as the means of exposure to the world. The object reduced to a state as a part of the objective, scientifically constructed, measured, world system. So that means to me, at least, it's kind of this ability to define argument and the definition that which I try to, that is my I try to remain loyal to a certain principle of radical aesthetics. Critical project, basically Marxist. I would say, insofar as an artwork is an affirmation of a singular imagination, and insofar as this imagination involves sensibility, the artwork is the simulation of the void. It's the simulation of the void. In a way that you can feel it, that there is something like nothing behind this, or this object, this installation, this piece of sound. What I'm trying to say here is, I said this radical things because such a definition is a critique of philosophization of artistic practice. Even though I'm using philosophy, at the same time undermining these views. It's a critique of philosophization of artistic practice. It's a return to the sensible. It's not savage. It's a return that, no, I know very well that piece by Kiefer was inspired belongs to the order of the sensible, which at the same time is not adding yet another single article to the circulation of the human values. That is a challenge by them. And honestly, let me come back to the initial question about Asianness, Asian as names, and follow. How can we escape this vicious circle, reducing the seed and being harmful, which is towards Asia as a ground for reproduction of this concept? Because that is what's happening, right? We know that. What happens is that we can go and we can criticize whatever, and then critique itself is a integrated assimilate. It is a kind of legitimation. It provides legitimacy for that term that has been criticized. I think radical aesthetic in this situation, well, whatever we call it, cognitive. It's a challenge. The challenge for radical aesthetic is how to escape skill those issues that we have around us. The pathway of active behavior, hopefully, is part of something that I want to imagine being part of the answer. Right? We introduce more. Going back to, in a main way, like novel, fiction, go back to the school of geography, look at the map, and forget what your teacher told you. Look at the map, you see, it's one piece of land. Epiphany? No. But perhaps a clear idea, as Tony said, okay, like this didn't work. It's provocation. Probably not. I think, you know, I can reformulate what I said at the end, which is that like this, that, okay, is one way, it's an ascetic way, is that to say, okay, I don't give a damn about all that, those discussions, I do my art, I write my text, it's my kind of poetry, whatever it is, apart from those, from the mainstream, or whatever that is the alternative mainstream, which is part of the mainstream, etc. Which is deserting subject. Deserting subject. You have always animals on deserting subject positions, at least those monks, etc. for me, and those who are the etc. They are kind of artists. That's one way to go. And I have no judgment about it. The second way is trying to do something else. I don't want to go far. Believe me, I just use this very naive idea. You have your book in geography school. I know that geography is a Greek term. It doesn't matter. You look into it, you see one piece of land. That is the second thing that happens. It needs to be developed, needs to be detailed, needs to be discussed. That's why we are here. That's why I'm sitting here at this level and talking with you. Welcome to fill in.
question time. He actually provoked a lot of them, particularly Tony. Okay, just any question about why? He's kind of anyway, just his alright. Okay, just whatever. Alright. Okay, I have questions. Okay. He's talking about how to overcome the kind of boundary or so already established discourse. Football says, how can we actually get through interpenetrating so discourse structure, dominance, and actually talking about some little marginalized part of discourse. Moderator. Nietzsche, actually, I think you would have some kind of question.
The thing, can I say something here? Is that, I've talked about instead of conflicts, antagonism, which come together. In relation to science, because what we are talking about here is also scientific discourse. So, what Asian art is objective can be read in two ways. The first one is historicism. What does it mean? It means that we have these traditions, old stuff, and we're there. Who is going to classify? Who told you that this is this thing? That the historian, the art historian, what does he even put them in the museum? Museum that essential.
Anthropologist.
That's one reading. And they even though you use contemporary art, those contemporary art, it doesn't make it conceptual, most conceptual art, and it is. What you are doing and what your spectator is reading your art will become historicist art. And that is my feeling from Beijing. I see that artist, he knows, he has seen a lot of art, etc. This retrospective on Evaneso, that one, Marina. It is something else. That's something else. I call it this scientificism, this historicism, which is unreflected, which is a part of scientific Cartesian reception of the world. And in body, this is subject that we can discuss, body that feels something, that art, that which is killed. I would dare to say that it's imagination. The same imagination that would give us to perhaps get closer to what we call possible.
Alright. You're talking, you comment yourself. Alright, you can self-criticism or self-commentary. There's a little bit of kind of tautology of some discourse. Okay, I think your point is very interesting. The issue, in relation to scientific discourse. I think I totally agree. Sort of mention of Asia is so closely related to the mention of race. It's Darwinism, everything. Not only Darwinism, also criticize Darwin, talking about that kind of race, but definitely that kind of actually perspective is sociological imagination. Already described about Darwin trying to explain that kind of competition. So I think this sort of that concept of competition definitely still it works ideologically at the same time scientifically. Knowledge of market, centrists always talking about market, it's kind of nature of the house. That is a little bit that foundation for the mention of perspective toward the world. So you actually talk about why do we like this? Why do we actually illegal like this? Something like that. So the question was some comments. I think a little bit related to your talk. You're talking about oil. Nokian sense, but you're talking about
Thomas, thanks for your very engaging lesson. I want to go back to the term rigid designator. Rigid designator. Rigid designator. That's the word of side. And this question is not entirely for myself, because I hope that what I gather is that it seems to be an alternative to the kind of postmodernist relativism that we try to carry out. Okay.
Okay, Cribby wrote it back in the 70s. It was used by Lacan in the 70s. And it's not, I mean, you know, Lacan has never been a postmodernist. And I don't know really what postmodernism besides architecture signifies. I mean, architecture, I understand postmodernism, but outside that, it's quite a fluid attitude.
I said that this is not entirely for myself, is that I wonder if this kind of foreground rigid designator, the acronymic, have anything to do with deciphering. Deciphering, you also mentioned. I wonder if there's anything to do with deciphering. Because it seems to be, so that's why I said it's not entirely my own question, because I think there's this, because of this occasion, because of what you had just done, what you had just improvised, I'd like to see if you can help us do a kind of demonstration of deciphering such a term to the layman, right? That is kind of, yeah, some of the region designator, as if there's any way, can it serve as one of the ways to help us decipher those ideas behind and some of the terms that we are familiar with to the layman, see if we can demonstrate some kind of explanation without moving to all those genres that we always are, or some of those that always are familiar. If I wonder if that would relate to what you said about not to philosophize artwork, not artistic practice.
Something was the canon code by Volvo. I'll give you an argument. Yeah. Works by Eva Hesse, late works by Eva Hesse, American artist. They are great examples. I think it's only this embodiments in her stuffing, which under-emphasizes even more than it is presenting. It is representing. It is presenting, that is what I'm trying to say. Art doesn't only represent. We have been criticizing representation. But there is something else in art, which is the presentation, active presentation. I don't want to go in one. White on White by Malevich. It's not example. White on White by Malevich is this presentation, not representation. It's nothing, it's white. But there's
it is my question to the extent that I seem to have difficulty explaining in terms of such a specific without alluding to those factors.
It's very simple. As I said, proper name. What is a proper name? You know, like Kiefer, I use Kiefer, but it's somebody that you're more familiar with. Let's say Frederick Jameson. Frederick Jameson wrote Postmodernism or no, Critique of Cultural Postmodernism. If he hadn't written that book, would that have changed that he is Frederick Jameson? No. If he hadn't entered into that marriage, would it have changed that he is Frederick Jameson? No. Frederick Jameson, if you go down, you know, just pin off all those descriptions, all those signifying chains around his proper name, Frederick Jameson. Frederick Jameson's name is there. Because it's a rigid designator that just designates existence. Now, what Grimm here, what is out of Grimm's scope, because he's an analytical German philosopher, is that this rigid designator is given to his Frederick by father, for example. This is a German figure or what? Yeah. By his parents, right? That is the second that was the act of naming. This act of naming establishes a relationship. A relationship could be a power relationship, for instance. We either go, you know, somewhere and say, thou art the ancient, whatever, is defining who has the right to define others. Other necessities. Not what you do. The first part is the original.
Okay. I want to start with the question that you posed when you finished the talk. I don't see so much that is going after me. Rather, we are along the same kind of line. You ask is that historians' way to keep things queued up. I think coming from a Heideggerian perspective, it does. If you look at all these texts, right? So you might be Heideggerian without knowing it. Yeah? I know you resist Heidegger. Yeah. So yeah. Look, that's just how it goes. Okay. Yeah. So I'm trying to bring back. So because in one of his texts where he actually explained why he was against the Hegelian dialectic. So he didn't beat around the bush. So at the end of it all, Hegel's system for Heidegger depends on the dialectic, right? And in the essence of truth, there's a short passage where he talks about the dialectical method, right? And how when you have the left and the right, when you have theses and antitheses, you might not have assimilation, affirmation, and arising, and the process may not proceed. And if that dialectic does not work, the whole Hegelian revelation of the spirit, right, history does not work. So, in that sense, your avoidance of history, right, the historicist way of looking at things, or what you call the scientific way of looking at things, perhaps coming from your experience in China, that is in a way Marxist, which is in a sense Hegelian, tends to place everything in the developmental Darwinian Hegelian sense, right? With the Communist Party on top of it. This is how the historicists or the scientific way that we see things. So this could be one of the ways, as you said, it's very political, right, to place the Communist Party at the top, right, and by rearranging everything in order and redefining from the bottom up. So, and at the beginning of the talk, I noticed that we used the word calling, which is a very Heidegger term. He wrote an entire book on the calling. It's called What is Called Thinking, right? Where, yeah, because the alternative, right, to the dialectic actually is another mode of thinking, which is called calling. And to think is a piety of law, is to respect what is calling you, and which requires an empty of yourself, and you don't know where you're going. You're just moving forward in this world. And for Heidegger, that allows art, and he has a book on art, which originally was not art, but technique, right, as a form of revealing. So for Heidegger, art does not follow the historicist scientific progressive way. So therefore, to read art history will be a waste of time for Heidegger, because that sort of organizes them about history. Right? So I like your idea of calling resistance against scientific fundamental approach. I think it resonates with Heidegger, and Heidegger may be more, maybe may resonate more than the Kant in terms of your interpretation of art. In a way that trying to see art as a revealing of something which cannot be placed along what is historicist scientific chain of being kind of thing, which in Buddhism terms is to set up an arbitrary examples. Yeah, so art does not represent, it reveals something about itself. So you're a Heideggerian, thank you.
Your podcast?
Now the thing is very simple. I'm not Heideggerian in the very exact sense that I don't think that unveiling is something that happens in the presentation during the end of an artistic practice. What is true in art is not the unveiling, the veil itself. Now I'm talking about Aletheia. Alright, Aletheia's unveiling, which is the truth, why we're that famous text about Manuel's shoes. Making about shoes. I wrote about it, so I don't know to what extent I am against Heidegger, and unfortunately it's to great extent. So it's not Aletheia, it's exactly the opposite. It's the act of veiling itself. The act of veiling that is the true moment. There is nothing. The act of veiling is related to erotic. And erotic is related to encounter with somebody else. It's about love. What you do in a love encounter is that you are surprised. What you do in artistic practice, hopefully, and that's, I don't want to sound prescriptive, but hopefully is that this moment that something surprises you. I think it's true about if you have, when you're a kid, you see, or a teenager, or young, you see this piece about, I don't know, but many people may see artwork, I think something happens. Something that is of the same dignity, same quality as the power of but that's one of the basic way beyond Heidegger and his German cold frozen agrarian landscape that is describing that text.
Thank you very much. about, do you have time? Okay. About aletheia, Heidegger was talking about the veil and the truth. Because aletheia is a non-covering. Yeah. So to say that to unveil the truth would be to set up another dualism between the veil and the truth itself. But for Heidegger, this aletheia is a non-covering. So it is not the case where the truth behind that covering. It is that something revealing itself of itself. Yeah. So I think you might have more resonances. Yeah, I mean, I don't see how. You might, and he's not. Yeah, sorry. Please continue. And it's not that. German as you might take him to be, because he did criticize the
You see, what art as kind of a simple opposition to mathematics or mathematical scientific works of art. So, actually, I had this French expression there, which is l'habillage d'autrui. L'habillage means pressing on. You press on the story. That is artistic practice. In artist texts, he's doing something completely. But he has this views contemporary discourse when it comes to linguistics. It's more like this kind of male gaze who wants to, press off the object of his design. What I'm saying is not.
There's a lot of dualism in the French language, which is more, I mean, philosophical dualism in French language, which is more totalitarian than what Heidegger was trying to say. So, yeah. Okay. Maybe carry on.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Oh, Jason will comment. Got some short rest. Intermission time. Drinking some coffee and 10 minutes. So we're gonna actually come back to around 40, 20 minutes. Go over there and you can get a coffee and cookie, all right? Alright, we're gonna have a 14 minutes, discussion, and then finish the session. Alright.
Okay, hello, everybody. Everyone can hear me? Yeah? So, I have been told that I am wrapping up. That's my job here today. I've got to wrap this up. So basically, we've been talking about Heidegger and truth, and Lacan, and but you look at the truth. In terms of the truth, you're now looking at the truth. Right? Forget all that theory crap. Yeah, this is the truth because I have been chosen to speak the truth. Yeah. So you can't, there's no getting away from this. You can't argue with me. Okay, what I'm about to say is a wrap-up. One, the last word. So, just leaves the question of what exactly I'm going to say. Well, I don't know. I'm just going to go with the flow here. I wrote some stuff. I was listening very carefully to all of the three presenters, listening to Legion and Tony and Dariush. Different presentations, each of those speakers was very different in their own way. I'm riffing here, so I'll just sort of start with Dariush. And my first response to Dariush was, and I think he mentioned Kant, Immanuel Kant. I think we're kind of in, if I could, my interpretation of Darish's intervention was essentially we're in a kind of Kantian dilemma, or in other words, there are two extremes. We're kind of we're either one of two extremes of a kind of Kantian dilemma in art today. And I suppose the first extreme, it relates to this question of the void, right? But it's a kind of I call it a Kantian dilemma because it's a way of talking about art and a way of thinking about art where art and the object of art remains in itself as an object of art. It remains completely beyond our grasp, beyond our sensible grasp, right? So that we have an experience with an object, an art object, and we accept that object, for whatever reason, remains beyond our comprehension. It has an impact on us, it has an effect, but the meaning is beyond and will always remain beyond, and that is in some way what art is about. It has this obscurity built into it, and that art isn't. No, I know it is. I'm saying there are two. Of course it is. Of course it's romanticism. I'm saying that these are the two I'm talking about two extremes of a Kantian dilemma. So I haven't come to the second one, right? So you've got to let me finish it, right? So this is the one romantic. So I'm completely agreeing with you. This is the one kind of romantic response, popular response. Do you want to come in there if you want? The truth is now allowing an intervention if you want. So this is one popular impression, and I think it's also present in many critical appraisals of art and what art is. That this romanticism has a very hard kernel. It's very difficult to break down that sense in which art is essentially doing something which will remain completely ineffable and incomprehensible to the spectator. So I'm not agreeing with that. I'm saying that it exists in the popular imagination as a reality. So that's one extreme of this kind of Kantian dilemma. And the other extreme, which remains Kantian, in my view, is where you have the critique of art. So we can use art, we can critique works of art, but then the critique itself in turn becomes an object of critique, and this is what Dariush was talking about, the other extreme of this romantic conceptualization or romantic idea of art. We cannot actually critique. We cannot provide we cannot provide a definitive critique of art, because essentially our critic is kind of recuperating, right? He's recuperating within the discourse, within art, contemporary art discourse. So whatever we say, however we use art, however critical art is, ultimately that critique is in some respect or at some point, that critique itself becomes a parody. Itself becomes part of that whole institutionalisation. So I'm not agreeing with either one of those positions, but I'm just saying that is the dilemma, let's say, of contemporary art as I experienced it. That occurred to me, that impression occurred to me, rightly or wrongly, during Darish's presentation. Now, of course, Darish moves to and has a different Marxist solution or a different position. Yeah? Am I going too far now? Go ahead. I'll continue, right? So Darish has a slightly different position beyond those, beyond the two Kantian extremes. Where let's say, art is not, Darish doesn't believe that art is incomprehensible or ineffable or removed from us, but that art is a practice, right? The art is a practice. Darish used the term void, but yeah, I mean, he admits, he freely admits that we can use other terms, right? I mean, name calling. You use a name and we accept that the meaning of the thing that is named must, at some point, remain independent of the term which is used to designate it. And we have to do that. We have to do that at many different levels. And this is, art is by no means the sole example of how this naming functions. If we did not accept that, then we could never translate anything. I mean, there are now people translating what I'm saying. They are not interpreting what I'm saying, right? They are translating what I'm saying. Now, the people who are translating this may be making some mistakes. That's okay. But we accept that the people translating what I'm saying are making accurate translations of my speech. So we must accept that. If we don't, then we have a serious problem here, that we have to question what exactly are we talking about. Now, of course, it could be that the people translating what I'm saying are in fact deliberately mistranslating what I'm saying. Okay? That's quite possible. But that would obviously change the nature of this presentation. I would no longer simply be summing up. Okay? I would be doing something else, right? But nevertheless, we are in this, whether we like it or not, we are in this situation where we cannot and we can never, in art or in any other practice, assume that the object is or is not ineffable or incomprehensible or whatever. Because when we use the word, and this is why Darish is using the word void, okay? This is I don't necessarily like the word void, but I think it's, why not? We can use the word void. But we can also use the word struggle. There is a struggle going on in art, and to understand art. I mean, the struggle is there when we see a Rothko painting, for example, and it's a painting on, like, you know, it has a sort of flat canvas and it's big and has a line and a triangle or something. And then there's some crazy name at the bottom, which is like, I don't know. We were talking about this yesterday, actually, when we were looking at the exhibition. That you have I'll take another example. So you have a kind of a contemporary Korean painting, which to me is, I mean, it is a kind of impressionist painting, and it's very traditional, this Korean painting. And it's a Korean painting of a tree with some beautiful pink blossom on it. But the title of the painting is Cosmic Void or something. The Cosmic Void or something like that. So again, you know, there is obviously there's almost like there is a struggle going on there, right? I mean, there is this kind of, you know, cognitive. Can we use the word cognitive dissonance, right, or something like that? I could be misusing that term. There's a kind of dissonance. There's a gap, isn't there, between the name, what it's called, and what it actually is. So I think, in this sense, I think this is important, and I think it comes back also to, you know, Tony's presentation, and also I had this impression when I was listening to Nietzsche, that I don't think we can get. I think you need to be careful when we use the word concept. There is this kind of, you know, this concept is a European concept. Is there a European concept, or are concepts universal by their very nature? I think, yeah, I mean, okay, yes, if you want to use that vocabulary, that's fine. But let's not confuse things, right? Let's not confuse the object, the art object, right? However ineffable it might be, however removed from our understanding that the object might be, let's not confuse that object with the concepts that we use to describe it. Let's not confuse the level, the physical level, or the causal level, the level of ontology. Ontology is a complicated word that many people use and misuse, right? Let's not confuse the ontology with the epistemology. Let's not confuse what something is, the being of something, with our knowledge of it. Let's accept that there is something like a dialogue or a dialectic going on, yeah, which enables us, at the level of our knowledge, at the level of the construction of our knowledge, which enables us to grasp what the art object means. Or to have the impression that we've understood what it means. Yeah? Let's try and bridge that gap. So obviously we're never going to know Asia, or whatever you want to, any example you want to use. But let's accept that we can come to know what we, in the words of Mao Zedong, in the famous words of Mao Zedong. Let's assume that we can and we will come to know what we do not know. Yeah? So let's maybe accept that however difficult and ineffable and so on the art object is, that we can arrive at some kind of understanding and knowledge of it. Darish also mentioned a word, scientificity. Yeah? Scientificity. And how discourse of art is, if I understand him correctly, the discourse of art is using or is making use of certain scientific, well, if you're an Althusserian, concepts or scientific categories, as well. I think that's a very, now maybe I could just say something about my response to this exhibition, right? I think that's very interesting when you come to a contemporary art exhibition like this. I am not a fine artist. I don't consider myself an artist. I have been invited here, I imagine, I'm a filmmaker. I also write or have written nothing particularly brilliant, but I have written about art. I have studied philosophy. So I have been asked to, I'm here because I have been asked to share my insights or observations. So my talking to you today is, despite the fact that I know a little bit about contemporary art, I'm not an expert, but I've been invited here to give my opinion about this exhibition. But my impression of the exhibition and looking at some of the exhibits, my impression is when I see these type of exhibits, when I look at these type of exhibits which are using, I hesitate to use the word science, but are using technology in ways which are, it's difficult for me to maybe look at these exhibits and distinguish them from something I might see in a science park, for example. And I had this quite a strong impression, I don't know why, maybe it was one particular exhibit that I saw where you have the mechanical, like the robot I didn't explore that particularly well, right? But you have this robot which is, we talk about binary data, right? So the robot has someone has programmed the robot to make Chinese characters, it's just binary data, right? The robot's is given a program and interprets the program and generates these Chinese characters on the glass. Right. It's very interesting. But I suppose the question, and this is just a very naive question, is when we have what is essentially a kind of science park installation, like something that you can see in a kind of science and technology park. It's very nice. But my question, and it's not a rhetorical question, I'm asking this in a completely serious way, I'm not being facetious. Why does the artist, what does that mean for the artist? How should the artist respond to that, what is essentially a very kind of, the artist is involved in this, right? But the artist is involved in what is essentially a very technocratic, maybe even at the level of his or her own practice, right? Maybe even at the level of his or her own struggle to be an artist. It becomes a very technocratic process. But what does that mean for the artist as an artist? So that's my impression of this exhibition and the exhibits, which I haven't fully explored them all. I'm going to go in a moment and hopefully have a look around a little bit more. But that's my kind of overriding impression of this exhibition, actually. Now again, this is in no way, I'm not making any kind of value judgment about art at all. I'm not making any kind of value judgment about works of art. I'm simply giving my impression about art, the artist. I mean, art is a name, right? There's a struggle, and there's a struggle to define art. That's part of what art is. It's the struggle to define what you're doing. What is it, actually? That might not be your question, but nevertheless, the question is part of the institution of art and the arts. What is it? What are its boundaries? So let's go. But anyway, let's turning in circles here with this. But, I mean, so that's my first impression, and maybe, I mean, how much longer do you want me to talk for? I don't really know what, 5 minutes? I don't really know where I'm going with this. But, so that's one question. The other question, okay, so this scientificity, I'm not really talking about scientificity, am I? I'm talking about technology, right? Technology empowers. I mean, God, let's not exaggerate here, scientificity. It's not always, I started off going in that direction, now I'm changing technology. But I will, anyway, we could talk about science, but we'll maybe do that later over a drink. But to the other question, and again, this is a question which is, you know, we're going to try and respond again to this Kantian romanticism, right? But the other question would simply be more of a kind of political response to what is contemporary art. And that is simply this. Forget about the art object. I couldn't care less about the art object and who is, you know, what is the art object, and, you know, we have loads of art objects everywhere. Right? The second question, the more political question is, what are the minimum criteria for art, for staging art? So forget about what we're doing, and forget about the object that artists are trying and struggling to produce. Where do we do art? How do we stage art? What is a legitimate space for art? Where does the art space end and the public space begin? Okay? Now this is, I don't want to talk about this too much because this is going to form, or was going to form, part of my presentation for tomorrow. I was going to talk about this. Where do we draw the boundaries between, you know, art and public space? Because art, like it or not, art is a private thing. Right? Art is a practice which involves free individuals practicing their art, right? And freedom of expression. But of course, I mean, Darius gave us today a very good provocation, which was precisely asking this question, or posing this question. Where is the stage here? Where is the stage? I mean, where are we? I mean, Darius got off the stage. Right? Darius was decided that the stage was inappropriate for this particular work of art. I don't know what Darius was doing. He was intervening, I guess, right? But, so that's the other question, I think, which is very interesting. And I think it's a very interesting question for Korea as well, for artists in Korea. Where does the stage end and where does, you know, real life begin? We had, yesterday, we were involved in a performance work of art. A Korean artist, State Revolution and Daughter. That's the name, right? State Revolution and Daughter, the Korean performance artist. And he was also kind of posing that question of the staging of art. I mean, you could say, I suppose, that he was staging something, and we were asking the question, actually, when is the art going to begin? We did a very good idea of staging. But I mean, that is also part of the work of art. Staging the performance is part of art. Deciding what are the conditions for a work of art is in itself, or can be itself, a work of art. So that's basically, that's just to wrap up my wrap up. That's where I'm at. That's a few just completely random, if you like, but probably not so random. A few random thoughts. But at this point, I won't be taking any questions because that's the truth. Yeah, go ahead, sorry. Did anyone want to ask any comments? Go ahead, that's...
All right, okay. Good, thank you for the talk. A little bit general comment. Response to the records publication. What is so passionate? So, what was it? So, a little bit, this is a little bit about the distinction between science and art. Just raises a very interesting issue related to the kind of relation between technology and art. It's not typical science. Science is a typical type of condition of identities. It's kind of to protect, just like the process the models, technology. So it's cannot go back for the sort of plasticity. Staging performance. Performance always happens in the conditional and plasticity as reality or society disposition against the kind of natural state. Alright, so I think we could actually discuss more about this one, looking at the art. So I think the program, introduce some what we have tomorrow is synthesizing what we talked about. But we can it's not to build this one here. So the timetable must be revised. So anyway, just we will continue to discuss this one, but I think we would actually give some opportunity to the question and to the what actually Jason question or any response.
I'll speak in Korean. 예술과 테크놀로지 문제에 대해서 한 가지 제 생각을 이야기 드리고 싶은데요. 테크놀로지가 디지털 테크놀로지 시대가 와서 미디어 아티스트만이 테크놀로지를 가장 커팅엣지 테크놀로지를 쓰고 싶다거나 아니면 제일 최근에 신기술 로봇 8처럼 그런 것들을 쓰고 싶어졌다고 생각하지 않습니다. 저는 어떻게 보면 물감이 발명된 것도 거기에도 사이언스가 들어가 있는 거고요. 그리고 조각이 서 있는 것도 거기에도 사이언스, 피직스가 들어가 있는 거고요. 그리고 사진의 발명, 지금 이번 전시회는 사실 3D 프린팅을 굉장히 많이 썼어요. 요즘에 가장 작가들이 관심을 있어하는 것들이니까요. 그래서 제가 생각할 때는 예술가라는 것은 동시대를 살아가면서 동시대에서 제일 새로운 것들, 아니면 새로운 흐름, 아니면 미래를 조망을 할 수 있는 존재일 수도 있다면 그것들의 방편으로서의 어떤 그 당시에 있는 기술들, 과학들을 쓰지 그리고 그걸 예술적으로 구현을 하는 이들이라고 생각을 하고요. 그리고 그것들이 최근의 경향만은 아니라고 생각을 합니다. 그리고 그 스테이지 문제는 내일 다시 많은 이야기들을 같이 좀 나눴으면 좋겠어요. 저희 전시 지금 보시다시피 무대가 있고, 지금 퍼포머들이 있고, 아니면 저희 관객이 무대인지 아니면 지금 있는 단상이 무대인지 굉장히 복잡한 무대들이 여러 개가 있고 그리고 이 파놉티콘의 구조들 안에 들어가 있는 것들이 무대인지 뭐 다양한 그 예술의 경계들을 좀 질문하는 전시이기도 하니까요. 그 부분에 대해서 어떻게 생각하는지 저도 좀 궁금하고 이야기들을 내일 좀 더 깊이 나눴으면 합니다.
How should I respond? Should I? Yeah. Look, thank you. So just 2 points. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Yeah, technology, sure. I agree with artists who are interested in technology. The one, and they want to be cutting edge, and being cutting edge is obviously involves technology. It's not really a choice, is it really? I mean, if an artist wants to define technology in those very kind of flexible terms, then yeah, the artist needs technology. The one thing I would kind of object to is that what is, I'm not quite sure what scientific technology. Just because of my own education, my own kind of philosophical education, I always, science is, Anna Badiou, of course, is always insisting on this, right? Science is mathematics and physics, and everything else isn't science. Everything else is an art, basically. Or maybe not an art, but everything else is, everything that's not science, it's not strictly science, is a technology, right? That's the first point. And the second point would be, where is the stage? Sure. I mean, I'll talk about this tomorrow. I'll try and talk about it. I haven't really decided exactly what I'm going to do tomorrow, but I had intended to talk about this question. It's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, my impression of Korean, and I'm going to talk now about my experience of Korean art discourse, right? So, my experience of Korean contemporary art discourse, I've been to a lot of art galleries, in most of them in Seoul. In fact, all of the major ones in Seoul, and probably most of the other smaller galleries in Seoul, is that the curators, when you read those catalogues, they love to talk about this idea. It's a very fashionable thing to talk about. In other words, to talk about the idea that, we're in a post-museum culture today. Art is revolutionary. It's revolutionising the social space, and it's pushing back the frontiers of the museum into society, breaking down the barriers, getting away from this, getting away from modernist art, because modernist art is so elitist, isn't it? We don't want that. We want art which is accessible and popular, and, it's not putting a barrier between us and the artist, and between us and the world of art. It's great, it's revolutionary. I'm not sure I believe in that. I think it's a lot of bullshit, actually, if you want my opinion. I think there is a debate to be had about the staging of art. But you can't reduce it to those kind of very crude terms. Let's create a space where people can network. Because those are the terms in which that debate is posed in Korea. It doesn't go any further than that. It's not even a question of art. It's a question of let's create a space where we can network. Let's turn art. In fact, let's make the whole world a museum. And that's what curators say. And I think it's very small-minded. That's my opinion of it. That's my opinion of it.
Can I just say, don't you think that this... look, don't you think that these
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
yes,
You should finish.
isn't it? There is a, I don't know, I just changed perspective, which is where to go. But strictly material perspective, don't you see a beauty in this unreserved affirmation of what it is, as it is, as a future?
I'm an outer which means I don't see any kind of literal truth anywhere in the world. Yeah? I think I agree with you that art is not an unveiling, but art is finding the veil, right? To do art is all about finding where is the veil. But so I don't know. I mean, in that sense, I don't take joy. You know, I don't take this joyous affirmation in art, for example, or anything.
My comment was just, it was related to what you said about what you have experienced.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, okay. So, yeah, I forget that.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I like it. I mean, what can I say? I love it actually. Great. Yeah. I would probably need 2 days or something for this. Yeah, that's another question, isn't it, about staging? I don't know. I don't know what other people's experiences are of this event, but they come and they have the kids and they're running around. It's great. They can do that. Personally, I would need 2 whole days. Just for this, not for the entire Gwangju Centre, right? I would need 2 days just for this. Okay, it's just go calm. I like to do things slowly. But there was so much of it. There is so much here. So yeah, I'm with you. I do like the affirmation and so on, and I do take pleasure in art. But I would need, and I just wonder how much. Yeah. But again, people can come and they don't have to see all of it, do they? They can see a bit of it. Thank you for the questions.
All right, actually, we got a lot of things to talk about. For tomorrow, we're gonna continue actually this talk and go over the problems. So thank you for coming and welcome tomorrow. Okay, thank you. And we're gonna get a concert after this one. So I took some break and then come back. So that's.
저희 그럼 콘서트는 6시에 시작을 하고요. 5시 반부터 we'll have a sound check starting from 5:30 till 6 o'clock, and the concert starts at 6. And there's a snacks and coffees in front of the library. Please enjoy them. 네, 그리고 5시 반에는 저희 이제 조금 있다가 이병찬 작가의 도시생명체 밑에서 큐레이터 투어 있을 예정입니다. There'll be a curatorial tour. Now, there'll be a sound check on stage, and for the exhibition, there'll be a
이게 말려있는데 하나씩 돌아오면 되게 돌아가. 이렇게 풀리면 괜찮은데 이렇게 풀릴 수 있는 됐어요?
요금 버튼을 누르시오. 대화를 들이마시오.
잠깐만.
꺼요?
여기 숲에 레스토랑이라고 숲이라고 있거든요. 가셔서 먹었던데 거기 그중에 예약돼 있어요? 누구 입장?
녹화 끝내요?